It is 8:07 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It's the 17th day of June 2026, and this is episode 1343 of Bitcoin. And Sam Bankman-Fried is trying one more time to get a presidential pardon, and a couple of senators are saying no. And that's the way that we're going to begin here on the Bitcoin and podcast with me, your host, bringing you all the news that you can use about Bitcoin and macro from around the world. Congress is also reaching a deal on the housing bill, which affects us in Bitcoin land because it's the bill that contains the central bank digital currency ban at least until the year 2030. It also looks like Binance may be ejected from the European Union. We'll get into that one. And staying in the European Union, Christine Lagarde is wetting her diapers yet again because of dollar stablecoins. Then in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about Nigeria and stablecoin scaling adoption there. Again, the IMF is having a real problem with this entire stablecoin thing because it doesn't allow them to have the kind of control that they normally have. And they cannot let it get out of control. So they're having a conniption fit. Illinois, a transaction tax. Yeah, we'll get into it, I promise. And then there is Mita, Mexico, or Punta Mita in Mexico. They're hosting the Unite Bitcoin, or I guess it's called Unite Bitcoin. It's a conference, so I'll tell you about it. It seems to have something to do with Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, and energy. So what we're seeing this consolidation around Bitcoin, AI, and energy. And what's fascinating to me is the fact that Bitcoin, the miners, were the first people before AI. They basically were the tip of the spear for compute when it comes to garnering and gathering up massive electricity contracts. They're the ones that are in the best spot to be able to drive forward this whole AI push. And I know that people are freaking out about this. Oh my God, Bitcoin mining death spiral. Just stop with that. I'll say more about it when we get to that story, but let's talk about Sam Bankman-Fried and what he's trying to pull off today. This is out of Decrypt from Stephen Graves. A bipartisan pair of senators is moving to put Congress on record against any clemency for Sam Bankman-Fried as the imprisoned FTX founder presses for a long shot bid for a presidential pardon. On Wednesday, Senators Ruben Gallego and Cynthia Lummis, the top Democrat and Republican on the Senate Banking Subcommittee on Digital Assets, introduced a resolution declaring that the convicted crypto fraudster should not receive a pardon, commutation, or any other federal clemency. Quote, keep him locked up, Gallego said. Bankman-Fried has shown no remorse for his crimes, Gallego added. Lummis, a leading crypto advocate, was just as pointed, saying Bankman-Fried had had his day in court and was chasing clemency that he hasn't earned, rather than taking accountability. Quote, SBF has clearly ramped up his pardon campaign, and Senator Lummis wants Bankman-Fried to know that she and her colleagues think he's right where he belongs, a spokesperson for the senator's office told Decrypt. The intervention by the senators come after SBF formally petitioned the Justice Department's Office of the Pardon Attorney this month for a pardon after completion of sentence, a request that remains pending. And just days earlier, the Second Circuit upheld his conviction and sentence, leaving him ineligible for release until at least 2044. Now, President Trump himself has ruled out clemency for Bankman-Fried, telling the New York Times in January he had no plans to grant it. Even so, the resolution reflects unease that the door could reopen, with Trump having pardoned other crypto figures, including Silk Road's Ross Ulbricht, BitMEX's Arthur Hayes and Ben Dalo, and Binance's Changpeng Zhao. Bankman-Fried has spent his imprisonment maintaining his innocence and lobbying for relief, drawing bipartisan rebukes before, including from Lummis in February when SBF's X account began promoting a crypto market structure bill. Prediction markets still put the odds of a pardon in the single digits. Ooh. Okay, so what's interesting about this is that you've got two senators that are introducing language in Congress to say no to this single person getting a pardon. And honestly, I'm sure it's happened before in some other administrations. I've just never heard of somebody who has pushed so hard to get some kind of clemency that and his crimes are worthy of being in jail, to the point that you've got not one but two senators who are drafting language saying no. I mean, that they've got their staff working on it. They actually have to pull together, I don't know, precedents. They've got to actually draft legal language. I mean, this is it's not like something you just, like, it's not like you're just dropping a hat. Their real work is involved here. And this real work is designed to keep this one single individual off the street. And honestly, I applaud him. I don't think SBF should be freed. I think the guy is, I think he's a sociopath, honestly. Because he doesn't really, he keeps saying, well, we had all the money to pay everybody back, but you didn't. Every accounting of FTX and Alameda Research and anything else that the guy was into, they didn't have the money to pay anybody back. So he rips so many people off. I just don't understand how this is still an issue, to the point that Senators Lummis and Gallego are going, okay, enough of this. Let's write it up and get this shit done. Okay. Remaining in Congress, we're going to talk about the housing bill that contains the CBDC ban. This is out of Cointelegraph. Jesse Coughlin is writing. The U.S. House and Senate have reached a deal to move forward with a housing bill which includes a ban on the Federal Reserve creating a central bank digital currency until 2030. The bipartisan group of House and Senate leaders released an updated version of the 21st Century Road to Housing Act on Tuesday, which aims to address housing affordability, but also bans institutional investors from buying existing single-family homes to rent out. The bill has included a CBDC ban since the Senate passed it in March. The House also passed its version of the bill with strong support in May, but the House and Senate disagreed on a few aspects. The Senate has now added further amendments that will be put before the House for a final vote. The bill is likely to pass quickly and would hand a win to Republicans who have tried to pass a CBDC ban for years, as earlier standalone bills had stalled in Congress. Crypto advocates have long criticized CBDCs, which they see as an attempt by governments to repurpose crypto technology to a centrally controlled asset. The deal also means Congress can focus on passing other legislation before the August recess and the November midterm elections, and in particular, the Crypto Regulating Clarity Act that many lawmakers have been pushing to advance. House Republican leaders plan to put the bill up for a vote after the House returns from recess on June the 23rd, two people familiar with the plan told Politico. The housing bill includes language that says the Federal Reserve may not, directly or indirectly, issue or create a central bank digital currency or any digital asset that is substantially similar to a central bank digital currency. It adds the clause will expire on December the 31st, 2030, and creates a carve out for crypto stablecoins or dollar denominated currency that is open, permissionless, and private. The clause revives much of the language from Republican Representative Tom Emmer's anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act, which was introduced June 2025, passed by the House the next month, but was never picked up by the Senate. U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order in January 2025 banning federal agencies from all work related to CBDCs, saying they threaten the stability of the financial system, including privacy and the sovereignty of the United States. So the housing bill may actually go through, and if it goes through and we get the CBDC ban, but only until 2030, that's not all that long, which is distressing. We should never consider a CBDC. But the ban on investment and brokerage, well, not brokerages, but like hedge funds and whatnot like that, from buying single family homes, I wonder how that's actually going to play out, because this is essentially kind of like a Republican bill. And I know that the Republicans are going to need all the help that is available to be able to have any kind of chance in the midterms at all. And honestly, it's not looking good unless Friday happens and we do sign the agreement with Iran, and the agreement is upheld by all parties, including Israel, even though that they're saying that they're not bound by the deal, and technically they aren't. But if they can act in some kind of good faith and shit quiets down in the Middle East and oil prices at least remain where they are right now, if not possibly drop some more, which I kind of see in the short term, but not in the longer term, because SPRs, or strategic petroleum reserves, are going to need to be refilled. They are damn near empty. So unless that happens, then I just don't see a lot of hope for the Republicans in the Congress. Not that I want the Democrats to win, but I mean, at this point, it's like better the devil you know, I guess. In either event, how does it play with the major donors to the Republican Party if those major donors want to buy single family homes and rent them out like they've been doing, which sucks for housing? It sucks for affordability, because as long as the inventory is being scooped up by places like Blackstone and BlackRock, housing remains unaffordable. And at interest rates where they are, it's still unaffordable. It just is. It'll be interesting to see if this thing passes. And again, even if it does, the CBDC ban ends in 2030 on December the 31st. What'll happen after that? Will they try for a CBDC? Because we better fight it if they do. Meanwhile, over in Europe, let's go across the pond. Binance reportedly faces European Union ejection as MiCA license bid nears complete rejection. Bitcoin magazine, Micah Zimmerman writing, Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, is on the brink of losing access to the entirety of the European Union after its application for a MiCA license in Greece faces rejection, according to Reuters. The decision, if confirmed, would prevent Binance from offering services across the 27-member bloc when the MiCA transition period ends on July the 1st. Under the new regulatory framework, crypto firms must secure approval from a national regulator to gain passport rights across the EU. Binance submitted its application through a Greek entity earlier this year, positioning the country as its regulatory base in Europe. The exchange pointed to Greece's workforce and operating environment as factors behind the choice. Co-CEO Richard Tang has expressed confidence that the firm would meet the requirements ahead of the deadline. Two sources told Reuters that Greece's Hellenic Capital Market Commission is set to reject this application. The regulator declined to comment, citing confidentiality. Binance said it has received no formal notice of a denial and maintains that its submission meets MiCA standards. The firm said they believe it complies with the framework and has not been told otherwise by any Greek authority. Despite that stance, the timeline leaves little room for delay. Without a license in place by the end of June, Binance would need to halt services to the EU clients or risk enforcement action from national regulators. That could include fines or restrictions that limit access across key markets such as France, Germany, and Italy. After the report came out, Binance sought to reassure users on X over its regulatory status in Europe. In a series of posts, the exchange said it remains committed to the region and is working to minimize disruption while it navigates the approval process. Binance remains committed to its European users and will continue to operate in compliance with applicable law. The EU has emerged as a major test case for global crypto regulation. MiCA introduces a single rulebook for digital asset firms covering areas like consumer protection, capital requirements, and governance. The regime is designed to replace a patchwork of national rules with a unified system. Binance has faced regulatory pressure in several jurisdictions over the past few years, including the United States and the UK. The outcome in Europe could shape its global strategy as it seeks to align operations with stricter oversight. Rivals that have secured MiCA licenses, which include Coinbase and Kraken, stand to benefit if Binance exits the region. A shift in market share could follow as users migrate to platforms that can offer uninterrupted access under the new regime. The potential loss of the EU market also raises questions about liquidity and product availability on Binance's platform. Europe represents a large base of retail and institutional users, and any disruption could affect trading volumes and token flows. Right, so that's the end of the article. And I find it surprising that Binance, for as long as they've been around, and for the sheer size that they are facing a difficulty in getting a MiCA license when Coinbase and Kraken seem to have easily procured those licenses. Is there something going on behind the scenes where Binance is persona non grata? And I actually kind of think of this is in terms of, is the United States telling the European Union, no, Kraken and Coinbase is okay, but Binance, no, we don't want them in. And if that would be if that is an issue, then the natural question to ask is why? What is Binance doing that Kraken and Coinbase isn't doing? Does Kraken and Coinbase play ball better with the United States government than Binance does? I could see that. I could definitely see that. And if that's the case, then Binance may find themselves on the downswing from where they sit in position today, which is pretty high up there as far as crypto exchanges are concerned. And they got a lot of products and a lot of customers. It could be a bad day for the guys over at Binance. Probably makes them feel a little bit dirty, which is why I'm friends with Soap Miner, who makes the absolute world's best handmade tallow soap. It's 100% grass-fed beef tallow, distilled water, and sodium hydroxide, or lye, if that's the other or the word for it. That is his 3 basic ingredients for all of his soaps. And it's hand soap. It's just it's a bar of soap, but it's the cleanest soap that rinses away it doesn't matter how dirty my hands get. I pick up a bar of Soap Miner and my hands are freaking clean. I use it to wash my hair. I use it to shave my face. I use it just as shower soap. I use it as hand soap. I use this stuff all over the place because it's also, not only are you getting clean with Soap Miner brand soap, you're getting moisturized. That beef tallow, it's like lotion. This is the most amazing soap ever. And he has several different scents. Cedarwood is one of my absolute favorites. He's also got a pine tar. He's got goat's milk, lemongrass, orange and clove, a lavender one. He's got a tea tree one. He's got peppermint. He's got Earl Grey. He's got redacted tallow, which is basically carbon or charcoal embedded in soap. You want to talk about getting clean and smelling nice? Dude, that is the soap for you. He also has rough cut tallow, which has no scent in it at all. It's just 3 ingredients: 100% grass-fed beef tallow, distilled water, and lye. That's it. It's the cleanest scent-free soap you will ever find in your entire life. Go to go to soapminer.com. That's soapminer.com. Get 10% off using code Bitcoin and 10%, guys. You can get 10% off using code Bitcoin and. Go to soapminer.com. Tell them Bitcoin and sent you. Okay, let's stay in the European Union for a sec. The European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, pushes for digital euro against dollar stablecoin. This is Atlas 21. ECB President Christine Lagarde is rallying support for the digital euro as the Eurozone's primary tool to counter the growing influence of dollar-pegged stablecoins in global payments, dismissing euro-denominated stablecoins as an inadequate alternative. Dollar stablecoin dominate the market with a capitalization of approximately $317 billion, while euro stablecoins fall short of $1 billion in market capitalization. Wow. Speaking at the Banco de España LATAM Economic Forum in May, Lagarde described the case for euro-denominated stablecoins as far weaker than it appears. She highlighted their vulnerability during periods of market stress and the risk they pose to the ECB's ability to transmit interest rate policy to the real economy. Quote, "If we want to strengthen the international appeal of the euro, stablecoins are not an efficient way to do so," she told the audience in Spain. ECB Executive Board member Isabel Schnabel reinforced this position June the 1st at a Bank of Korea conference in Seoul, drawing a parallel between modern stablecoins and the money market funds of the 1970s that drained deposits from banks. Since almost all stablecoins in circulation are pegged to the dollar, Schnabel warned that their widespread adoption would strengthen American monetary influence. Quote, "Dollar dominance would be reinforced, not necessarily because of stronger economic fundamentals, but through network effects, scale, and first mover advantages," she said. Schnabel also cautioned that persistent dollar stablecoin dominance is not in Europe's interest, as it could limit the euro's role in tokenized finance and, by extension, in the international monetary system. On this issue, UniCredit has also recently warned that Europe lacks the tools to manage a banking crisis caused by stablecoin. The ECB's preferred solution? The digital euro, and it's still very far from launch. A pilot program is not even expected to exist before the second half of 2027, with a 12-month trial involving a limited number of banks and merchants. Even in the most optimistic scenario, the ECB does not expect to issue a digital euro before the year 2029. The European Parliament voted in February to approve the digital euro regulatory framework with 420 MEPs in favor of an amendment supporting its online and offline functionality. Lagarde stated that the digital euro would operate on European infrastructure, reducing dependence on foreign payment providers such as Visa and MasterCard. On the question of the digital euro and its progress, Atlas 21 has already examined the milestones of the European project in depth. 10 major European banks, including BNP Paribas, ING, and UniCredit, have formed a consortium called Kivalis to launch a euro-pegged stablecoin, applying for an electronic money institution license from the Dutch Central Bank. Transaction volumes in euro stablecoins grew from $69 million in January in 2025 to $770 million in March of 2026, according to TRM Labs. Circle's EURC stablecoin holds over 50% of the euro stablecoin market, with a supply of approximately $543 million after securing an early French electronic money institution license under MiCA, the European regulatory framework for crypto assets. That's the end of the article. This is not looking good for the euro, or, well, for the European Union. Lagarde is almost singularly focused now on the threat of United States dollar-denominated stablecoins moving across the planet. Now, I've told you this was going to be happening. First of all, they're way too late. But this Isabel Schnabel, drawing a parallel between modern stablecoin and money market funds of the 70s that drained deposits from banks, we've talked about this before in a different context. The context being here in the United States, where these banking lobbies are freaking out about stablecoin. Specifically, they're freaking out about companies being able to offer yield on stablecoin, or essentially an interest rate on stablecoin deposits, which is almost for sure not going to happen. But they don't even want interest rates on, because that's a static pile of stablecoins. They don't want you to put it into a savings account and be able to draw interest from it. But there's also another framework where if you use the stablecoin, you can get some kind of reward or some kind of interest rate, but they're calling it a reward. The banks don't even want that. They don't want stablecoin to have any kind of reward, yield, interest rate, nothing. And that's here in the United States. Yet in the 1970s, I don't remember history books ever telling me that the banking lobby was up in arms against money markets. So why weren't they pissed off then? Again, going back to the European Union and Isabel Schnabel, she is looking at the history and she is saying, hey, when money markets came up, it drained deposits from banks, yet the banks still exist. So, how much damage did money markets actually do if all these banks are still alive today? Still, the European Union is way late to the game. They are not, the European based stablecoins, euro-based stablecoins are not going to gain the traction that they need against the United States dollar. So here we have Christine Lagarde arguing against not only dollar-denominated stablecoin, but also European or euro-denominated stablecoin. She instead is fighting for a digital euro, a central bank digital currency. And in so doing, she is actually scuttling any hope that the European Union has to play any substantial role whatsoever in the digital economy that is being put in place right in front of our eyes. They are infighting. They are infighting about this over at the European Union, and it's not doing them any good at all. But even if there wasn't infighting, the European Union has already lost the battle against United States dollar-denominated stablecoin. The way the world shakes out after that is anybody's guess. Let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities. Energy actually gaining a little bit today. A little bit anyway. Brent North Sea is up 2/3 of a point to 79.54. West Texas Intermediate is up a full point to 76.81, which is actually lower than it was this time yesterday. Natural gas is acting as the hedge. It is down 2.84% to $3.14 per thousand cubic feet. Gasoline is up slightly to $2.88 a gallon, and Murban crude skyrocketing 4.4% to $75 a barrel. Metals are mixed. Palladium is down 3/4 of a point, but gold is up a half to 43.77 and 5 dimes. Platinum is down 1.5. Silver is up just over 1% to $70.73 per ounce, and copper is down a third. Ag is mixed as well. Biggest winner today is wheat, 2 points to the upside. Biggest loser is coffee, 0.25% to the downside. Live cattle is down 0.25% as well, but lean hogs are up 1.2% and feeder cattle are down a third. The S&P is down 1/10 of a point, but the NASDAQ is up a third, the Dow is up a third, and the S&P Mini is up 1/2 point. And Bitcoin, $65,350, slightly lower than it was yesterday. $1.31 trillion of market cap, and we can only get 15 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 20 million, 43,876.14 of, and average fees per block are normal. Mempool is showing, about 50 blocks carrying 123,000 unconfirmed transactions, waiting to clear at high priority rates of 3 sats per VByte. Low priorities will get you in at 1. Hash rate stands at 929 exahashes per second. So honestly, doing fairly well considering, the prices of Bitcoin are suppressed. And from curses and cursors, yesterday's episode of Bitcoin and Kano comes in swinging 10,000 sats. He says, I appreciate you doing what you do, and I always get value. See, it's that easy, folks. Thank you, Kano. I appreciate that. Tulips right behind with 9,555 sats says, Tulips, check my math. I have $100. I buy 100 USDT. Now, I still have $100 in purchasing power. Tether buys treasuries and gets 5% or $5. The USA also has $100 to bomb brown people. We effectively doubled the money plus 5%. Am I going crazy here? This charade is just tulips, and it's all going to zero. Thank you, Tulips. I haven't heard from you in a while, and I always love reading your notes. Nick Dose with 234 sats says, cheers, right back at you. Noster Gang with 101 says, thanks, no, thank you. And please remember, the show lives and dies on these donations. If I am bringing you value, if you could reflect that value back to me in the form of Satoshis through Podcasting 2.0 and boosts and streaming me live Satoshis while you listen to the show, it is not only appreciated, it's the very basis of the value for value economy that we're all trying to build. It's not just about circular economies. It's about giving real value for value that you perceive is real to you. So please donate. I would appreciate it. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. Scale of stablecoin adoption in Nigeria makes risks even more pronounced, says the International Monetary Fund. So the other end of the globalist structure, ECB being one end and the IMF being one of the other ones, is, well, they're both crying, and they seem to both be wetting their britches. Stephen Graves from Decrypt is writing, it's the pace of stablecoin adoption in Nigeria that has highlighted the benefits of dollar-pegged crypto assets and sharpened their risks, according to a new report by the International Monetary Fund. IMF researchers noted that stablecoins have become a meaningful cross-border payments channel, with the country receiving some $59 billion in crypto asset inflows between July of 2023 and June of 2024, and accounting for 60% of stablecoin inflows within sub-Saharan Africa since 2019. While conceding that stablecoin adoption brings clear benefits, including financial inclusion and cheaper cross-border payments, undercutting conventional remittance channels, the IMF flagged monetary sovereignty and financial integrity as concerns. Let's pause. It's concerning that monetary sovereignty, it's a concern? Monetary sovereignty is a concern of the International Monetary Fund. Just let that sink in. They're telling you everything you need to know about their organization in that one single statement. Continuing, dollar peg stablecoins could represent a digital form of dollarization, weakening domestic monetary policy, while traditional financial monitoring systems fail to capture stablecoin transactions effectively, with anonymity raising the risks of illicit finance. So, okay, so I think okay. The IMF is saying that it threatens monetary sovereignty, not from an individual standpoint, but from a country over country standpoint, like, Nigeria losing its own fiat currency, losing any relevance whatsoever in place of the dollar. So, okay, that actually does make a little bit of sense. Okay, I'm gonna rescind my critique on the IMF, even though I can't stand the organization. There's no need to actually lie about it. So they aren't talking about individual monetary sovereignty as being threatening, as much as the fact that there is a threat to the sovereignty of individual nations and their own currency systems. And that is true. That's part of the dollar milkshake theory. And if you don't know what that is, it's that all fiat currencies collapse into one other currency. In this case, all fiat currencies, or most of them around the world, are going to fall into either the dollar or the yuan, or the yuan, however you pronounce it, over from China, and maybe the euro. There's basically three dominant fiat currencies on the face of the planet right now, and all of the world's other fiat currencies are basically going to dissolve into them. And the dollar actually has the best chance of winning because we are so far ahead with stablecoin. And I know it should be Bitcoin. I understand that. I'm not making an argument that stablecoins are good. Please don't think that. I'm just the weatherman. I'm just calling it like I see it. Okay. And stablecoin linked to dollar is doing a hell of a lot more, or at least basically making more inroads into the world than the stablecoins that are based on the euro or the Chinese central bank digital currency that they got going on. Anyway, quote, attempts to suppress stablecoin use are likely to be only partially effective, the report said, urging a pragmatic response that allows for innovation while managing risks. The authors suggested safeguarding monetary stability to combat digital dollarization, lauding recent macroeconomic reforms and tighter monetary policy. Other risk management strategies include strengthening oversight, improving data through combining blockchain analytics with reporting on Naira stablecoin conversions, and upgrading existing payment infrastructure to reduce reliance on unregulated channels like stablecoins. The IMF has repeatedly criticized stablecoins over the past several years, warning that they could stifle central bank control and amplify financial crises. As recently as last week, the International Financial Institution urged close monitoring of crypto adoption in Nepal, highlighting the risks of circumvention of capital controls on large-scale deposit outflows. So the IMF sees stablecoin as the danger that it actually is. Well, it's dangerous to the power structure. That doesn't mean that it's good for us either, by the way, for like your regular pleb on the street. But in the short to medium term, it's better for the regular pleb on the street than central bank digital currencies, fiat currencies, the financial instrumentation and re-instrumentation of the world's legacy financial systems. It just goes on and on and on. There's going to be, like, and Christine Lagarde said it herself a couple of years ago, if you allow the people an escape hatch, they will use it. She said that. That's almost a direct quote. we cannot allow an escape hatch, because if you allow an escape hatch, the people will use it. And she was talking at that time specifically about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. She hadn't really gotten her teeth, she hadn't really bitten into the whole stablecoin issue. But, it is what it is. Even the IMF here is basically saying, if we're not very careful, we're going to end up with one currency, and it's going to be the dollar. And I'm here to tell you that is, in fact, what's going to happen. And there is no structure the IMF or the European Central Bank or any other central bank can put in place that's not going to, or that's going to somehow or another stave off the full capture of most of the world by the United States dollar through the mechanism of dollar-based stablecoin. And it's going to allow, and the end game is this: infinite printing of the United States dollar. Because once the stable coins that are pegged to the dollar have propagated through the host, in this case, the world citizenry, like a virus, and it is propagating like a virus, it's basically propagating at geometric scale, we're going to be able to just pump money into the system like nobody has ever seen before. Because think about it. We can, like in the let's just take it back to 1992, just to pick a year. And if we really wanted, we were printing money, but let's say we really had a situation where we needed to print a shit ton of money and have it almost immediately exit the United States borders so that it wouldn't cause very much inflation at home, so that these people that are doing this can still get voted back into office. Because, if you piss people off enough with inflation, they won't vote for you again. But if we can take that inflation and we can dampen it by sending it to, Nigeria in 1992, we would have done so. But we didn't have the mechanism to do so. Now we have a fully well-rounded and very much in progress system that is going to allow us to print dollars and have it almost immediately go over the borders into somebody else's country. We will still benefit from being able to print the money as far as the United States federal government is concerned, but the effects of inflation, it'll take a while to reach back across the borders into the United States. But when it does, and it will, it's not going to be pretty at home. And the widespread destruction of that money printing that will occur in every other country that the dollar is basically touching is not going to make us a lot of friends. That's just me calling it the way that I see it. Let's move to Illinois. This one is pretty much rebounding all over Nostr and Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, because the Illinois governor has signed the crypto transaction tax bill into law despite industry uproar. Cointelegraph Martin Young. Illinois is going ahead with a 0.2% privilege tax on cryptocurrency transactions involving its residents under a new $55.9 billion state budget bill, which was signed yesterday. Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the measure despite opposition from crypto industry groups over the provision, a transaction tax that applies to all digital asset transactions on any registered platform under broadly termed, quote, digital asset business activity, end quote. Quote, this will create an unprecedented tax regime that disproportionately burdens Illinois residents for simply using digital assets and will drive innovation and builders out of the state, the Crypto Council for Innovation said, as it urged a line item veto of Article 3 of the Senate Bill 3019 on Tuesday. Illinois is home to several well-known crypto companies, including Zero Hash, Jump Crypto, Bitnomial, and Apex Crypto. The wide-reaching digital asset tax could also impact out-of-state companies if they have sufficient customer activity inside the state, according to U.S. tax firm BDO USA. The measure, which takes effect January the 1st of 2027, will also make Illinois the only state to tax digital asset users regardless of income, gains, or profits, unlike traditional tax structures. Digital asset brokers operating in the state are also required to register and comply with new reporting obligations. The CCI argued the tax would single out digital assets simply based on the technology used to process them. Quote, taxing a transaction based on the medium through which it happens to occur on a blockchain is akin to taxing correspondence because it is delivered by email rather than by the United States Post Office, end quote. They also said the timing is poor, since the industry is already adjusting to the Federal Digital Assets and Consumer Protection Act, the DACPA, and Congress is separately working on a national tax framework for crypto assets. The Digital Chamber sent a similar letter opposing the digital asset privilege tax on June the 3rd with similar arguments. Quote, the tax will discourage the use of digital assets at the very time when financial services are moving to the blockchain, freezing Illinois residents out of progress and innovation, and pushing the existing Illinois blockchain and crypto companies out of the state, it read. Miles Jennings, head of policy and general counsel for A16Z Crypto, said on X on Wednesday that it was one of the most anti-crypto laws in the United States. Quote, this is effectively, or rather, there is no effectively comparable state financial transaction tax on stocks, bonds, or derivatives anywhere in the country. That means crypto is being singled out in violation of several federal laws, he said. Further quote, rather than embracing innovation and the cost efficiencies blockchains can deliver for ordinary people in Illinois, the state is poised to punish its entrepreneurs and citizens that want to use crypto, end quote. The crypto tax, which was bundled with registration and compliance requirements, is one piece of a much larger package built to close a budget gap. The bill is expected to raise more than $800 million in new tax revenue to support Pritzker's $55.9 billion budget for fiscal year 2027. Okay, so a 0.2% tax on crypto transactions, except reading this language, it makes it sound to me like the only place that they can really even come close to understanding that they can collect a tax on something is if you do something like sell through Coinbase or some kind of like, I send like a Bitcoin transaction to Strike, something like that. Then I'm going to get taxed 0.2% on the value of that transaction at the time that I sent it. This is not good for Illinois. And like New York, Illinois is basically going to see a drain if it stands, and it looks like it's probably going to stand. I don't see anybody rescinding this through any mechanism anytime soon. This is it for Illinois. You now have a 0.2% tax, and there's nothing you can do about it right now. Maybe the next governor. I don't know. I don't live in Illinois, so I'm not going to pontificate upon it. But you guys have a 0.2% tax on transactions if you make them to some kind of registered brokerage account or whatever. But if I buy a refrigerator from you and you're selling me like a used refrigerator, let's keep it like house to house, there's no way that they can know. And if I lived in Illinois, would I risk it? Fuck yes. Absolutely. I'd buy a used car from somebody with Bitcoin, with a transaction, and I wouldn't report that shit at all to the state. They can go pound sand. That's between me, you, and the fence post. But if I need to sell some Bitcoin or something like that, well, and I got to do it through a brokerage so that I can get it, into like convert it to dollars and get it in my bank account, if I'm an Illinois resident, I'm going to end up paying 0.2% tax, because even if I don't report it, the platform will, because they'll know I live in Illinois and I've made the transaction. Coinbase doesn't want to lose their license in the state or however that works, and they are going to report that shit to the state tax office. And if I don't report it, then I'm going to be, well, kind of in trouble. You have to at least report it. So I feel bad for the guys in Illinois, but the only hope for change in that state is through the citizenry actually making moves to change the way their state acts, and nobody can tell them what to do. You have to be in Illinois, and that has to be your state for you to give a shit to actually do something about it. Let's move to Mexico. Invite-only MiCA Tech Talks 2026 to unite Bitcoin, AI, and energy leaders in Punta Mita. This is Micah Zimmerman finishing us off for the day from Bitcoin Magazine. Public companies now hold more than 1.2 million Bitcoin. That's almost 6% of the total supply. And that number is still climbing. Goldman Sachs projects U.S. data center power demand will hit 66 gigawatts in 2027, more than double its 2025 level, as AI infrastructure construction accelerates at a pace that the grid was never built to handle. Bitcoin miners and artificial intelligence hyperscalers are now bidding for the same megawatts in the same substations on the same timelines. Those three storylines, corporate Bitcoin adoption, AI's takeover of financial services, and a power crunch reshaping energy markets, have been running in parallel for 2 years. A new event is betting they are now one story. MiCA Tech Talks announced today that its 2026 summit will convene October 25th through the 27th in Punta Mita, Mexico. The invite-only gathering caps at 125 guests, all high net worth investors, family office allocators, corporate strategists, and builders, for 3 days of sessions, private villa workshops, and dinners at the Cupuri Beach Club inside Punta Mita's gated community on Mexico's Pacific coast. The corporate Bitcoin build-out is accelerating on every front. Strategy holds a shitload of Bitcoin as of June the 16th, making it the largest single public holder by a wide margin. SpaceX holds a lot of Bitcoin when it went public, landing immediately at number 8 on the leaderboard, and Strive grew its holdings 30% in a single month and climbed to number 7. Meanwhile, the energy math is getting harder. U.S. data center electricity consumption stands near 180 terawatt hours today and could reach 400 to 600 terawatt hours by 2030. Marathon Digital and Core Scientific have both moved to convert mining infrastructure into AI data center capacity, treating their existing power contracts as the asset. The companies that control cheap, reliable electricity now sit at the center of 2 industries at once. Programming at MiCA Tech Talks run across 3 tracks: macro and corporate strategy, energy, and artificial intelligence. Confirmed speakers include Jeff Booth, founding partner of Ego Death Capital and author of The Price of Tomorrow; Lisa Howe, founder of BTM Energy; Sam Callahan, director of strategy and research at Orange BTC; and Andre Neves, co-founder and CTO of ZBD. The summit is organized by Lynn Bairstow and Israel Munoz, partners at Base Layer Advisors and co-hosts of the Build with Bitcoin podcast. Bairstow founded Mita Ventures in 2012 after starting her career at Merrill Lynch, and has spent 2 decades backing early-stage technology across Mexico and Latin America. Munoz co-founded a cross-border payment startup and helped build out 500 startups' Miami operation before shifting focus to Bitcoin infrastructure. Whoa, you're going to pay through the nose for this. Passes start at $2,750 and rise as the tiers sell out. Registration is open now. So I guess you have to register And then they look at your registration and decide whether or not they're going to invite you. And if they do invite you, you're going to pay $2,750 to hang out on Mexico's Pacific coast, which actually doesn't sound like a bad deal. But the real story here is that it was Bitcoin miners who forged the way to buy these power contracts for compute. I mean, yeah, sure, AWS, and they were there. They had data centers, but nothing like this. Nothing like the scale of a hyperscaler. And it's the Bitcoin miners that are, here's the argument that I feel is kind of brewing here. Bitcoin miners are abandoning Bitcoin to go into AI. There's more money in it. That's the whole argument in a nutshell. But as we know, things are much more nuanced than that. Bitcoin miners see a chance to make more money. Yes, they do. That is absolutely 100% correct. I don't think that they're fully abandoning Bitcoin. I think that they found themselves quite in a serendipitous moment because these guys really know how to negotiate power contracts with grids and power suppliers and all that kind of stuff. We have all kinds of neat products that Bitcoin miners have forged, like being able to return energy to the grid by shutting miners down, like in Texas, to balance load when temperatures get hot and more air conditioners are running. Dude, the amount of experience that these guys have in building these contracts is exactly what AI hyperscalers need. So who would you rather have driving the future of AI hyperscalers? Guys that cut their teeth in Bitcoin, or just a bunch of suit bros that were trading Enron before that whole thing fucking collapsed? I can tell you who I'd rather have. I'm just going to leave it at that. Again, a reminder, this Friday I will start a series of reruns because I am going to Southwest Colorado. I'm going to be in the San Juan Mountains where I hope to get my mental faculties back and maybe gain another brain cell to rub together instead of the 3 that I got. Maybe I'll come back with 4 or 5. But tomorrow I will bring you another show. Friday we'll start about a week and a half of reruns, and then I'll be back here and start up brand new shows for you here on the Bitcoin and podcast. In the meantime, y'all stay loose, and I'll see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.